So we're going to start with the bank today. This is someone I followed for a really long time in my London days. This is one of the agencies that you cannot not have heard about if you're in marketing and if you're branding. He's one of those voices that reminds us, while marketing is a shitstorm, there is lots going on, lots of confusion, data, AI, tracking metrics, performance, and everything. The fundamentals stay the same. Strategy and consistency. Please help me welcome Tom Roach from Jellyfish, here to talk about brand building in a world of creative fragmentation. Tom.
Thank you so much. What a welcome, and what a great place. Cyprus, this is my first time in Cyprus, so thank you so much for having me here. So this is a talk that started life in a couple of ways. Some articles that I wrote, a talk at Cannes that I did with Grace Kite. So if you follow Grace Kite, an amazing econometrician who has a brilliant company called Magic Numbers. Now, it's building big from lots of littles. Grace calls it lots of littles. I call it big as a collection of smalls, and it's really about how do we make sure that we are consistent in the way we show up for our customers, even though this world is full of incredibly fragmented platforms, attention is fragmented, our audiences are fragmented. How do we make sure we're consistent despite all of those issues? So the fundamental question here is, what does brand building look like in a world of media and creative fragmentation? There's loads of stuff written about media fragmentation. Not very much, actually, has been yet written about creative fragmentation. When I was researching this topic, very few articles, in fact, nothing came up on Walk, which is a brilliant resource on creative fragmentation, but lots on media fragmentation, which is an established sort of theme. So I wanted to get into that and get into what the issues are, what this difference between what the traditional effectiveness experts say, people like Les Binet and Byron Sharp, and what the platforms are telling us, and why there's a bit of a conflict between those two things. So historically, brand building has been about these things: singularity, consistency, repetition. We use words like purpose, vision, North Star, big idea, proposition, key message. Lots of singular concepts which are essentially about, and there's a brilliant book by Richard Rumelt called Good Strategy, Bad Strategy. And he identifies that all strategy is about diagnosis, and then coming up with a single idea, and then a set of coherent actions to make that idea come to life in the real world. And so it's all about singularity and then multiple tactics. And this is a brilliant quote from Les Binet, good ex-colleague of mine, brilliant thinker, like a fundamental, a brilliant thinker in the world of effectiveness. Brand building is about creating associations, feelings, and habits through repeated exposure. So you find your core brand proposition, and then you find an organizing idea and an expression of that idea that you then hammer home repeatedly over months, years, even decades, and some of the best brands are built in that way. This, if you're from the advertising world, this is a classic bit of Kantar data, which really people in the traditional ad world love because it says that classic thing of, if you throw people a load of tennis balls, they won't catch one. If you throw them one, they're likely to catch it. So this data says if you try and deliver a key message, they're likely to hear it and understand it. If you try and layer in multiple messages, and break your consistency, then they're less likely to get that key message delivered. So single-mindedness has been really important in the traditional advertising world forever. And recently, last year, System 1, a brilliant ad testing company who test ads for their emotional impact, they came up with a brilliant piece of research called compound creativity, which looked at how if you repeat consistently over time the same campaign, your advertising, your communications will get better, they'll get better branded, they'll perform better on System 1's ad testing, and you will get better results over time and you get this kind of compound interest effect. They talk about compound creativity. It's a bit like compound interest. So after about 12 months, things begin to really skyrocket. And you see these extra business effects happening. And that's all very consistent with what Byron Sharp would say. He says that you cannot be distinctive if you are not consistent. Distinctiveness is about looking like yourself, looking recognizably you when you show up as a brand in any touch point. If you've been consistent over time with the clothes that you're wearing as a brand and your tone of voice and the assets that you are using, then you will become distinctive over time. If you think about the way that Coca-Cola has been built over 100 years or more, that's exactly how that brand has been built. You cannot be distinctive if you are not consistent. But what that data and what those advertising, communications, and marketing gurus say is not what the platforms and their algorithms want. It's not what the platforms tell us all the time they need from us. The platforms are constantly demanding fresh, new, original content, not this repeated, consistent stuff that I've just been talking about. But the platforms were not built for brands, they were built for people. They were built, well, not for people, they were built for profit, but they were built to try and get the attention of people, get their eyeballs, get them addicted, and keep them on those platforms. And the way you keep people on those platforms is to serve up fresh, original, often user-generated content, because they're entertainment platforms generally. And that's in conflict with what I've just talked about. So we as brands and brand builders and marketers have to remember that the platforms actually weren't really built for us. They were built only secondarily for us to build our brands on. They were built for users first and foremost. And these platforms, they serve fresh, original content, and the algorithms benefit that stuff, and they want to serve fresh, new stuff all the time. And it's why you get these kinds of debates on LinkedIn, like the traditional advertising effectiveness people will say, ad wear out doesn't exist, but the social media people will say ad fatigue set in and we need more assets. And we hear that all the time from our social media people. So system one on the left, they will test a TV ad, and over several years it will not change in response in their testing. Whereas ads on Meta will fatigue very, very quickly. So you'll get a 60% drop in conversion rate after 3 or 4 repeated exposures. So big difference in this perception of what the kind of traditional long-term brand building data says versus what people like Meta want from us. And Meta also say they love diverse creative. They love it if their algorithms really love it if you give them a variety of diverse different assets. And when you ask Meta about this, they'll say, when creative is too similar, the ad delivery system reaches the same audiences repeatedly, but diverse creative allows it to find new audiences, so you can get extra reach from creating a diverse set of creative assets, which is not what the traditional ad people say. And Meta will say 20 plus creatives in a campaign will drive improvements in CPAs, in reach, et cetera, et cetera. So diversity of creative versus singularity of creative. So singularity, consistency, and repetition is the orthodox view of how brands are built. And multiplicity, novelty, freshness is what the platform view is, what the platforms say they need from us. How do we square that circle? How do we navigate that situation? Well, I don't have the complete answers. I think we're only all learning about how to deal with this, but I think this is a familiar scenario that we're seeing in our day-to-day. I've got 5 principles, though, for brand building with lots of littles. Five principles for dealing with this world. So the first is exploit the synergy effects of using multiple platforms. Synergy effects across platform. This is really a principle, it's a bit like the media multiplier effect principle that's been known for a long time. And this is a great chart from Grace Kite, which demonstrates this in action from her econometrics data. So the gray, the kind of top gray and blue bars at the top, that's about 40% of the synergy effects of different channels working together, whereas the bottom ones are kind of individual channels and the work that they are doing for you. So multiple channels and get them orchestrated correctly. And that's, it's not just about your use of media, it's about your use of creative. It's not enough just to layer in extra media. It's about making sure that the creative content you've got in those channels is connected in some way, is building on each other, has some relevance to each other and some connective tissue between them. And these synergy effects are getting more and more important. So Kantar say that pre-2014, about 18% of brand impact was coming from these synergy effects. And post-21, they said about 45% is coming from synergies. So if you're not doing this as a marketer, then you're really missing out on a huge important factor here, which is the synergies across media. Principle number 2 is to aggregate millions of fleeting moments of attention. There's a concept called aggregated attention, which the attention measurement company Lumen came up with Havas, and they talk about aggregated attention. So it's not enough these days to expect people to watch long films, long videos. We need to understand that most of the advertising touch points we're able to deliver are incredibly fleeting, are incredibly momentary. And so we need, again, to add those up into something big, to make sure all those little fleeting millions of pieces add up to something greater. The really world-leading attention measurement expert, Professor Karen Nelson-Field, did some analysis of 130,000 ad impressions, and she found that 85% of those impressions were not getting 2.5 seconds of attention. 85% were not getting the 2.5 seconds of attention that you need to make a longer lasting brand impression, to make a memory, which is what marketing is about. It's about making memories. So we have a real problem with the digital ecosystem, which is that there's not enough longer attention being delivered. But we have to work with that. It's not enough to say, well, we'll forget it. We need to work with the system that we've got, work with the advertising mechanisms and the landscape that we have. Now, the reality is that attention has always dropped quite significantly for any given channel. And on the right, you can see a chart from another measurement company, Lumen, who across different channels, it shows that there's always this big steep drop in attention. And even with TV, you get a fairly steep drop. So with a 30-second TV ad, for example, might get 13 seconds of attention. A YouTube video might get 5 or 6 seconds of attention. A Facebook ad might get 2 or 3 or 4. And what this really says is you need to try and stretch attention, get a few more seconds, get people hooked a little bit, but you're not going to get people watching a 90-second video, all of it. You're not going to get the whole of your piece of content on average consumed in its entirety. And that obviously has implications for how you tell your stories creatively, where you put your branding, how you make sure you make maximum impact when you've got the most eyeballs up front in a piece of communication. And this chimes with what Byron Sharp says. He says, be humble, expect only fleeting exposures. Don't expect people to watch a 9-minute YouTube video or a 2-minute YouTube video. They just won't on average. And so often, in creative terms, we'll see longer videos where the branding only happens at the end, and there's no branding or brand role throughout the storytelling, and that just won't work these days. Number 3, we need to make creative that's fit for platform. We need our creative work to be really well attuned to the platform that it's been designed for. And we see that all of the measurement companies and all the platforms tell the same story. This is some data from Kantar. And they saw that when you have a campaign that is not well integrated, when all the pieces are separate, you get a certain base level of brand impact. If you then create similar ads that are basically one TV ad, say, cut up and stuck on the platforms, then you'll get a bit more brand impact. If you then have similar ads that are connected in theme or in their assets they're using, but that those assets are tailored and bespoke to the platform they're in, then you'll get double the impact. So you need to make sure your ads are both customized to the media channel they're in, as well as connected to each other in some way, so they're building and reminding people of each other, so there's connective tissue. So really, it's a story about creating ads bespoke for channel, bespoke for platform, bespoke for format. It's not enough to put your TV ads on the platforms. I think we all see, if we're on TikTok, you'll see an automotive advertiser where they really just put their TV ad on the platform. You flick straight past it if you see that. You need to see something in that environment which feels attuned, has the grammar of the platform that you're expecting to see. So don't put your TV ads on the platforms. Don't put your platform ads back on TV. That also doesn't work. And often, don't put your specific platform ads on other specific platforms. Sometimes short-form video can work across different platforms, but generally, this is, I think, a good rule. And there's another really important thing, a base-level thing going on here, which is some data from CreativeX, who are an AI measurement company, who look at sort of basic hygiene of how fit for platform different ads are. They say that 50% of media budgets are put behind ads that are not fit for platform. And not fit in very, very basic, simple to fix ways, like there's no branding, or the branding's in the wrong place, or the sound's on or off wrongly, or the length is wrong, or the framing is wrong. You know, really basic, simple things that they say 50, and they actually say 50% of total digital media budgets are wasted as a result. I think it's probably an exaggeration, but their estimation is $200 billion worth of media globally wasted as a result of this very easy to fix thing that you know, if we just get the hygiene factors right, we can improve. Principle number 4 is to employ imaginative repetition. This is a concept, it's not a new concept actually, it's a concept from the 80s from John Bartle, who was one of the Bs in BBH, great London agency. So he was talking in the 80s, where the media landscape was much simpler. It was a landscape of TV and out of home and radio and some press. And even in those days, BBH were talking about creating organizing ideas, enduring brand ideas that are expressed in imaginative ways across different platforms. And that's what we need to do. We just need to do it in a far greater scale than we ever needed to do back then, because we have a far, far more fragmented media landscape than we had back then. BBH had this lovely expression, moving it on without moving it off. How do you move your brand on so it's telling people fresh stories without moving it off brand so that it's recognizably from the same brand? So always trying to find really imaginative ways to repeat yourself, essentially. So don't repeat the same words, repeat the same story and message and take out, but in fresh new ways. And there are some great brands doing that kind of thing. I think Liquid Death is an example of this, where they always show up incredibly recognizably, but incredibly creatively. It's always very, very recognizably Liquid Death, and delivering the same core promise and the same attitude and tone of voice, but just done in really fresh and interesting and creative ways that get attention and get you feeling this is a brand that's doing interesting things that I want to be a part of. A brand that, a case study on this whole thing was H&M. A brand idea they had in New York was called Find Your Beach. It was aimed at trying to sell swimwear to a young urban audience in the summer in New York, an audience that don't have much money, don't have much time, very little time to go on holiday, and aren't that near the beach. And so they needed to find ways to get people to feel personally engaged with this idea of finding your beach wherever it is. So they briefed a whole load, hundreds of CGI creators and AI creators, each of whom found an expression of that core idea in their own way. And they had really great success with this, really good consideration improvements, extra reach, as you saw from that meta thing about getting reach through diversity, and really good improvements in cost per person who was reached and had their consideration levels improved. So a strong example of this idea of how you deliver an organizing idea with one singular idea, but then expressed in 1,000 different ways. And this is how I like to think of this. I think, actually, I might have stolen this from Meta at some point, but talk about this as brands as a system of ideas. A brand as a system of ideas, not a brand as a sequence of ideas. So across all these different platforms, finding your content strand within a platform, finding a consistent strand that you deliver long-term, over time, and finding ways for each of those individual ideas to connect up to other ideas through the use of brand assets, through the use of one core, single-minded, organizing idea kind of in the background. Hard often these days, I think, to have a slogan or an end line that is consistent everywhere, because so many times in the social platforms, you can't use that kind of brand language. You need to be a bit subtler about it. So you need to find smart ways of delivering this consistency and this connective tissue. Principle number 5 is that AI is actually our friend here. I know there's people in the creative world who are scared of AI, and of course it will have implications for our jobs and the numbers of people needed, but it can be very, very useful for delivering the extra speed and velocity and creative scale in production terms that we need here. And also brand consistency. If you can put your brand guidelines into AI, it can help you deliver extra consistency with the assets that you're producing. This is an example, a really fun example we did for, at Jellyfish for a presentation we were giving at South by Southwest, where we came up with a gummies brand, a mood-enhancing gummies brand that we invented in 24 hours. We briefed all of our AI tools. We've got a tool called Pencil, and I use a strategy tool called Springboards. It came up with the name, the end line, scripts for videos, the names of these different characters, Zingy, Mellow, Thinkle, and Flameboo are these fun little emotional characters that were designed a bit like the Pixar movie, if you've seen that Inside Out, where the different emotions have different characters. So we wanted to create a brand of gummies that had that kind of fun, it was kind of adult, but also playful at the same time. We made a video in a couple of hours the day before the presentation, which scored a 3.7 out of 5 stars on System 1's ad testing platform, which is well within the top 10% of all ads ever tested by System 1. So there you have essentially a TV ad made in a couple of hours that's performing better than, or could perform better if it was real, than many, many TV ads on our screens today. So big implications for the speed with which we can work and the scale of the assets that we need to create these days. Talking about scale, this is a global beauty brand that only 6 or so, no more than that, a few years ago, needed 300 assets a year, and then 6 years on, in 2023, needed 10 times that, 3,500 assets. And that's, now we're into 3 years on again. I'm sure the number of assets that they will need now will be vastly increased again. So we're just on this exponential journey of how many things we're needing to create. It's not always necessary to create millions of things. In fact, I did hear about another global cosmetics brand that was asking an ad testing company to test millions of assets. Now, if you're making millions of assets, you're probably making them with the AI assistance, and you're going to need AI to help you evaluate and measure those things. So again, AI is our friend in measurement as well. This is a tool we use within the Brand Tech Group and Jellyfish, which is called Pencil Pro. There's an SME version called Pencil, and the enterprise version is Pencil Pro, and it's in use across 3 of the top 10 global advertisers, and it's being used to make hundreds of thousands of assets faster, cheaper, and better in terms of its ability. It's plugged into your social accounts and your platform accounts, and it's able to predict whether ads will perform better or worse based on its huge data set. And so it's able to weed out, you're able to weed out the ones that won't work so well, so therefore able to improve average ROI as a result. So it's in use. AI is here, it's here to stay, and it's a big part of the world we're in. We're using it for Virgin Atlantic. A really brilliant creative agency called Lucky Generals give us the core master assets, and then we make hundreds of things off the back of those master assets with brand consistency. Super important. It's about consistency. And you can see how consistent that is. And the brand team, the design team at Virgin Atlantic, when we first presented Pencil to them, they just breathed a sigh of relief because they were missing deadlines. They were being given briefs by certain teams within the organization, were unable to meet the deadlines for some of the stuff they were being asked to do. And now Pencil is helping them create, I think this was like 900 things in 7 days that they would otherwise have needed weeks or even months to make. So it's a huge time-saving opportunity. So there we have it. Big as a collection of smalls. We need to create high velocity and variety of assets, and we need to employ imaginative repetition to do it. We need high fit for platform. So that's probably going to mean platform native creative. It's definitely going to mean platform native creative. It's probably going to mean platform native creators. You might hire creators to work on your agency or client teams. And it's going to need high consistency. Really core, strong brand strategy that stays the same over years. Brand assets that you build, brand codes that you build into everything you do connective tissue across everything you do, and ideas that are consistent over time but evolve and are connected in a system, not simply one single thing delivered and repeated over time. So thank you very much. That's everything I have to say.